out to Socrates. Socrates still trying to get the opening. Oh, Socrates! Whoa!
And there it is. The crazy gang have beaten the Culture Club.
Mijatović, can you hear me? Mijatović, your boys took a hell of a beating. Your boys took a hell of a beating.
Welcome to Your Boys Took a Hell of a Beating, the Yugoslavia 1987 module. This is our first go behind the Iron Curtain / into the Eastern Bloc. Not behind the Iron Curtain as such, but very much part of that hegemony of the Eastern Europe and a place of wonder and amazement sporadically across so many nations that no longer exist, where a place where crack Eastern European teams come from. But this is a delve into the national team, or certainly a junior version of it, with various avenues to go down beyond it. Joining me for his Your Boys Took a Hell of a Beating debut, Michael Hamlin. Welcome, Michael. Give the listeners a big up to where you're coming from with yourself and the topic you have selected.
Thank you, Stephen. Some people might even know me of the 80s, 90s football page on Twitter and on Blue Sky. Anyone who knows me on that will know that I talk about Yugoslavia probably far too much, as well as other various bits and pieces that maybe we'll come across as we go along through today. Why have we chosen this one? Mainly just because it's such an amazing sort of tournament, and it's not a mystical tournament, but it's one that people refer back to, and I think it just deserves a bit more sort of love and attention, a bit more a review, and that's basically why I thought it was a good one to go with, Stephen.
It is a blinding one to go with. Just to say, there's such fascination with Eastern European football. It was such a mysterious thing, and the football was magnificent, and it was just ethereal. In an era in which we didn't see much football in continental terms. Eastern European football was like an added treat. This one surrounds the 1987 World Youth Championship finals, as won by Yugoslavia, a magnificent Yugoslavian side with so many players that will go on to magnificent things. I mean, by way of a build-up to it, Michael, I mean, Yugoslavia themselves, 1987 is a salvation in a way. We'll kind of thread back to where they come from longer term. We'll give a quick nod to that, but at senior levels, the 1980s hadn't been a particularly kind era for Yugoslavia, even though they'd been present at the 1982 World Cup finals, they'd been present at the 1984 European Championship finals. Both had kind of blown up in their face somewhat, and that juxtaposition from the team that they were at the 1974 World Cup, where they were so fancied, and they looked so much the part certainly in the opening group stage, in a group in which they shared with Brazil and Scotland and Zaire. That Yugoslavia, by the time 1987 comes around, and this the overused phrase of the golden generation, this is a golden generation, and it's very well timed.
No, very, very much so. I think it's very well timed politically as well as on the football pitch. But yeah, you're quite right about the sort of Spain 82 and Euro 84. Didn't go to Euro 80. Also didn't go to Mexico 86 or Euro 88. But Spain 82 and Euro 84, both knocked out in the group stages in both tournaments. The Spain 82 group, with Northern Ireland, Spain and Honduras, you think they've got a good chance of getting through that group, if I'm honest with you. Spain, you would think, being the hosts, yes, they're going to qualify. Honduras, you'd expect them to beat quite comfortably, and Northern Ireland, you probably expect them to win as well. It doesn't happen. They draw with Northern Ireland 0-0. They lose to Spain as expected, probably, and they only beat Honduras on a late penalty. But it's not enough to go through. They go out on goal difference. Oh, sorry, it's goals scored actually. So they, going into Euro 84, the brilliant qualifying group, that one with Wales, Bulgaria, and Norway, and goes literally right down to the last game where it could have been. I think Wales in the driving seat. I think Bulgaria, if they got enough goals, perhaps, or enough goal difference. But it's 2-2. Bulgaria have a golden chance, miss it. Yugoslavian commentator famously says, "That's it. It's all over. There's no time." And Yugoslavia go up the other end, scoring it, and go to Euro '84. But at Euro '84, they're in a really tough group with Belgium, France, and Denmark. And of course, we all know what happens with France at the Euro in '84. And we all know what happens with Denmark, sort of going into '86 with the Danish Dynamite. So I think they played a little bit defensive and they played within themselves and a bit pragmatic. I think they used something like 57 players between '82 and '84. Didn't really know the right chemistry, which players to use. And I think if they probably played the style of football that they probably could have done, then maybe they would have gone further in Euro '84. But again, you look at who they're up against in that group. It's probably understandable that they're going to finish where they finished. And don't get me wrong, Platini scores a sensational hat-trick when they beat them 3-2 again in France. But yeah, it's just, they're just so good technically in this era. They've got all the right attributes, skills, but they're probably just playing within themselves. Maybe not robust enough. Maybe haven't got the mental strength. Who knows? But it's they've got some fantastic players going into sort of '86, '87 anyway.
Without a shadow of that, they've got very good team. What's worth saying is that the European Championship qualifiers at senior level, it's England that go up against them. Two intriguing games when it comes to England. They beat them 2-0 at Wembley early in the qualifiers. That mad. We'll come to it. We'll do a nod to it because this is I think it's about 2.5 weeks after Yugoslavia's lift the World Youth Championship. There's a qualifier in Belgrade at senior level. So yeah, there's no shortage of Yugoslav talent at this point in time, but they are in need of a boost. And this youth side, it's worth bearing in mind that Yugoslavia they've only played once at the World Youth Championships going into this tournament, and it was Japan, '79. The arena where Maradona makes a global star of himself. He puts himself properly on the map at that tournament, and Yugoslavia don't do much at that tournament, but the present there. They'd never played in the tournament before. They'd never played in it since up until 1987. Then suddenly, here they are. This has kind of within its age group, I don't know, connotations to say kind of like the Netherlands at the 1974 World Cup at senior levels. There's a kind of this nation that's not really kind of within the currency of playing in that particular tournament. We're not used to seeing them there, and then suddenly they're airdropped in, and they absolutely just blow everyone away in terms of the style of football they play, and the results that they get. They managed to go one step further than the senior Netherlands side in '74 at these finals in '87. At youth level, it's just we'll do that in a minute, but yeah, that nod towards Yugoslavia as a football playing nation as well. Twice beaten finalists in the European Championships. The semi-finalists in the very first World Cup in 1930, one of the few European travellers. They lose the first European Championship final against the Soviet Union in Paris in 1960. They reached the final again in '68 and really should have won it in that first game against Italy. Again, up against strong opposition and a well beaten in the replay. This great side in '74 that goes to the World Cup that seems to run out of steam in the second group stages, but have been the best team going out of that, advancing from that group with Brazil. Outplayed Brazil in the game that they played them against. Was stronger than Scotland. Put 9 past Zaire when both Brazil and Scotland struggled to put enough goals past them. So we're talking about one of those wonderful national sides at senior level that have these wild fluctuations. As we say, those European Championships, lack of World Cups sometimes, but then 3 back-to-back World Cups where they were 1954, 58, and 62, where they played West Germany in the quarterfinals, 3 successive tournaments, losing out in 54 and 58, and then beating them in 62 to reach the semi-finals. So this Yugoslavia side that had known fine days and aesthetically pleasing teams throughout the 60s and 70s. It was a wonderful thing that Yugoslavia side had, what they'd previously done prior to the fluctuations of the 80s.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think some of the players, as I said, that they had sort of going into the 80s or in the mid 80s with sort of Safa Susic and Jurovic and players like that, and players that came into the team, of course, Jovan Stojkovic in 84. But it's this youth generation that is unknown, that's bubbling under the surface, that just explodes onto the scene. But Yugoslavia always seemed to be a team that, as you mentioned, they nearly get there, but then something happens, something falls apart. They don't have enough to just get over the line. And then, maybe that's a mentality thing, but this is when it literally all changes.
It totally does. No, the lead up to the European Championship in '87. It's we've said that they're a nation of football and substance. What they've done in across several decades, post and pre-war. They've flattered to deceive sometimes. They've threatened to win things. They've gone through that regression. But here is a side that's spearheaded by Robert Prosinečki. The Zvonimir Boban's in there. Davor Šuker, Predrag Mijatović, Robert Jarni. And that's just to name but a few. Michael, and even though they turn up at the finals with these players of great substance to be, qualification for the finals, it doesn't come easy. And with the finals being in Chile as well, they've got a lot on their hands to be able to, conquer the World Youth version of the World Cup.
They only really qualify for the World Champion, for the Youth Championship, by finishing sixth at the Under-18 Championship in '86. They lose the first game, they reach Germany, and then go on and beat Romania 5-0, and hence why they finished sixth. So they go into '87, very low expectation going to the tournament. I think they send the team more as a obligation than expectation. And the team, the players you mentioned there, and you can add sort of Lektovic and goals, Štimac, Gordon Petric, who played for Rangers as well. But the players they don't take, Alan Boksic, Mihajlovic and Jugovic, they're kept at home because their clubs think there's more experience to be playing in the Yugoslav First Division. So you think those three players could have gone as well. And you just think, oh my God, what a team. It's almost like a superstar team of under-19s, under-20s. Unbelievable team that is just going to conquer everyone.
It is. I mean, and they play some magnificent football throughout that tournament. I mean, if you're a frequenter of football, you'll find a lot of these games, and it was just what's quite startling, Michael, is the way that they tear into the house in the very opening game of the tournament. It's startling, really, and as a as by way of kind of like planting a flag, you couldn't have done it any better than putting 4 past the house. Although there's a couple of goals in response, but Davor Šuker in particular is outstanding in this game.
Yeah, you're quite right. To turn up, beat the host 4-2 in the home stadium in front of 67,000, and what it did do is it turned the Chileans to support Yugoslavia. There's quite a, they didn't know this at the time, but there's quite a large sort of ex-Yugoslav sort of expat sort of community in sort of Santiago, and they found these groups of ex-Yugoslavs, and they started having nights out with them, and partying probably harder than they should have been. But the Chileans then just basically started supporting Yugoslavia, and they obviously go on to beat Australia 4-0, and then beat Togo 4-1. And as you said, Šuker's on fire, Boban's on fire, Mijatović starts scoring, and they're just smacking goals past. They scored 12 goals in 3 games. As I said, they're just almost having the time of their lives, absolute time of their lives.
Oh, it really is. I mean, what's quite startling is that what are we now? We're just under a decade, just over a decade later. You've got Šuker and Mijatović are the men behind Real Madrid breaking that. That kind of curse on the European Cup. 98, 32 years they went without lifting, the European Cup from number 6 to number 7. It was a massive chasm, which nowadays, given the veracity of Real Madrid's relationship with the Champions League, it's even for those who know about that 32-year gap, it's a startling thing to rediscover sometimes. When you look into these type of things, but this is kind of like you've got players who will go on and play for like Milan. This is one of those. It's just like the aligning of all the stars is quite incredible for this Yugoslav team. And like you say, they go on and put 4 past 2 more unwitting opponents. Give us a run through those games, Michael.
Well, I think with Australia, they were sort of 2-0 up after 22 minutes. I think watch the goals on YouTube. A bit grainy, if I'm honest with you, but you can still make out what's going on. And I should say, I think Australia sort of really knew what hit them. And I think in the second half, they then sort of scored Boban sort of later on, and then Šuker gets another in the 71st minute. But it's just a dominant performance, and Australia just couldn't cope with it. Similar to Togo as well. Mijatović scores 2 goals in the first sort of 33 minutes, scored just after half time, and then Šuker gets a penalty late on 84. It's just domination. It's almost like I think they just take the foot off the gas because they don't need to play. They could probably gone on and scored even more goals, but I think they knew they were through, and they just enjoying themselves and just basically ready to go into the quarterfinals.
They are. A certain Ange Postecoglou is part of this Australian squad at the 1987 World Youth Championships. What do we think of? We expect big things of Ange Postecoglou's future managerial career in the decades to come, Michael.
Well, he's probably playing a high line defence and letting in 4 goals. He's playing too high and letting space into the back like Tottenham seem to have done last season.
A very interesting approach to the game. But they put 4 past Australia. Brnovic, Šuker gets 2 more. Boban's in there. Then it's 4-1 against Togo. The attendances for so many of these games in this tournament are absolutely massive as well, Michael. You mentioned the 67,000 that watched the opening game, but that's not alone. Chile Togo 60,000, 75,000 for Chile Australia. Yugoslavia Australia still gets 20,000, even though it's a game not with Chile involved in it. It's startling the appetite for this tournament in Chile as well, but that Yugoslavia side clearly captured the imagination, like you said, with that expat contingency in Santiago. There's a certain joy in a major international tournament where you have an incoming team that is taken to the heart of the host nation and the people who are clicking through the turnstiles to watch these games.
Yeah, no, I think in some respects it's quite rare because I think especially a team that beats your host, you're not going to be overly happy about it. But I think if you've got an appreciation for football, you're seeing something that's just aesthetically pleasing and great on the eye, then you're going to watch it, aren't you? And I think, as you say, there was a great appetite for this because for a youth tournament, as you say, these crowds are staggering. You struggle to get this at some major tournaments in the 80s. So to get this for a youth tournament is staggering. And they obviously definitely love their football over there.
Oh, they really do. I'm just looking down some of the other results. Italy and Brazil progress from Group B. 27,000 in Concepcion for Brazil's game against Nigeria. You've got East Germany and Scotland. Scotland, progress beyond the group stage of this tournament. That's another one to look into on another day, maybe. But Scotland's participation in this tournament, to manage to get out of Group C, something that the senior side still, haven't managed to do at a major tournament to this day. But this particular Scotland side progress ahead of Colombia. South American opponents, and then you've got West Germany and Bulgaria progressing from Group D. And again, there's no shortage of interest in the games. Into those quarterfinals, Michael, Yugoslavia's dubious reward for topping Group A so emphatically is to face Brazil in Santiago. Brazil take the lead in this. Alcindo, just before half time. The dream, must be over at this point for Yugoslavia.
Well, of course, it's worth noting as well, Brazil are the current champions as well. So
yes, such a track record at every level, but the reigning youth world champions.
And it's also important to notice as well that Red Star Belgrade tried to pull Robert Prosinečki back. They wanted him back to play in the Yugoslav League, and Haveland, their president, got involved and blocked it and said, no, he's here and he's not going. And that's quite especially quite important in this game. But Mijatović equalises, and then Prosinečki scores a sensational free kick in the last minute into the opposite top corner to win it in the 89th minute. And that's, I think, to beat Brazil is always, for any international international team is amazing. But to beat the champions in the last minute with a free kick doesn't really get much better than that, does it?
No, not at all. Not at all. It is an incredible achievement. Looking at some of the Brazil players in this side, Cesar Sampaio is part of that side. Adilson, again, talent to burn. This is led by Gilson Nunes. Brazil, they are the favourites to win this. Without a shadow of a doubt. And Yugoslavia have gone and done what they've done. 60,000 watched this at the Stadio Nacional. 35,000 for Chile. In Italy, they're sent to Concepcion for finishing second in the group. They're sent away from Santiago. But still nearly not a million miles away from being twice the amount of people who managed to watch the game involving Chile in the quarterfinals are watching this incredible game between Yugoslavia and Brazil. If you can go out there and find it, do go out and even if it's just the goals, because these are just such vivid games. They're absolutely unreal. On to the semi-finals, Michael. Surely now at this point you've beaten the hosts in the opening game. You've cruised past Ange Postecoglou and Australia. You've defeated Togo, and then you've out Brazil in the quarterfinals. What else is there really to fear from there? But there is for certainly teams to fear.
There certainly is. They obviously go on to play They obviously go into the semi-final against East Germany that won the under-18 European tournament the year before. And obviously beat them in their match in the first group match. So it's not really a great reward. But to be fair, when you get to the semi-final of any tournament, it's never a reward who you're going to play. It's always going to be someone tough. So you're playing the East Germans. They got Matthias Sammer in this side. So what a player he turns out to be. Winning the Ballon d'Or in '96, and obviously being part of sort of Borussia Dortmund and briefly in Milan. He did really well in Milan, but didn't stay very long, did he? Yeah. And that's they beat that. They win this one 2-1. Štimac and Šuker. It's a hard-fought game, and I think in this game, Prosinečki gets suspended, so he's obviously he gets yellow carded and he gets suspended, so he's out of the final. But yeah, a tough game against a quality opponent with some great players.
It really is. I mean, and again, this is such an evocative game. East Germany themselves have had some absolutely outstanding youth sides that never quite translated it to national senior levels. But yes, again, to win this game, this test of character. It would have been so easy for Yugoslavia to fall at this stage. You've seen it so many times to knock out that. In many sports, you can point to a lot of sports where tennis or whatever it is. You knock out the number one seed in the quarterfinals, and then the next step is a backward step. You lose to someone that is more of a contemporary or someone that you should at least on paper beat. But this is a remarkable result, but it's a massive blow to lose Prosinečki.
No, definitely, because this time, and don't get me wrong, Boban's been playing sensationally as well, but Prosinečki's been the one that's been getting all the plaudits. He's the one that is literally running the show and sort of making Yugoslavia tick. And he obviously goes on to be player of the tournament, and this is his tournament over. So that sort of says it all. Yeah, it's a massive, massive shame to lose Prosinečki, not just for Yugoslavia. Just, I think, for the spectacle, that's the game that he should be playing in, because he's Robert Prosinečki. And of course he's born in West Germany as well. So that's another little. I know he's obviously not German, but he's obviously born in West Germany. So that's another little story there. But so the final was against West Germany. Again, that's not a reward to play West Germany in the final. And Boban steps up to the plate and he scores. I think he scores. It's a late goal, and I think West Germany equalised straight after. I think
Yeah, two goals in 3 minutes.
Yes,
towards the end of it.
86, 87. Yeah. And then it goes to penalties. And we all know what happens with penalties in West Germany. But in this case, it doesn't go to form. And Yugoslavia win 5-4 in penalties and take the title. And as I said at the beginning, there was no expectation on this team from within Yugoslavia. And then to win the title was a fantastic achievement, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, it was true. So Marcel Witterczak is the man for West Germany who is simultaneously the hero and the villain. He scores the 87th minute equaliser to Boban's 85th minute opener, and then he misses from the penalty spot for this shocking development of any West German national side losing in a penalty shootout. It's a stunning thing, but in a way as well, it goes full circle to that trilogy of World Cup quarterfinals, 1954, 58, and 62. The two are head to head. It's almost fitting that it's West Germany that are the final hurdle there for this young Yugoslavian side.
Yeah, as you said, there's a bit of history there. So to get one over on West Germany with what's happened in the 50s. Who knows how much that comes in subconscious of these players? Probably not, but it's one of those little quirky things, isn't it? They lose them in 1974 in the second stage as well. So yeah, it always comes back to West Germany. They have the little scraps with France as well in the early 80s as well with qualifications in Euro 84. So they get their own back in 1988 in a qualifying game. But yeah, it always seems to be West Germany at this point.
And as it will be again at the 1990 World Cup. It's amazing how often football revisits itself in such circumstances. But we mentioned it earlier on that Yugoslavia have only once before played in this tournament, not particularly with huge merit from in 79. But to sweep through to success in 87 with the side that they had, and to do it in the final without Prosinečki as well is absolutely startling. I mentioned for Mirko Josic, the coach. You look into his career, an epic journeyman of a coach. He's been across his career, but this is an incredible achievement. For the coach, along with the players.
Oh, very, very much so. I think, with those players, as I said, there's three key players that don't even go, and sort of with Josic, he comes back in the story in a few years later with Coca-Cola. I know we're jumping forward a bit, but that's another one of these little quirky things that happens in football, isn't it? That all of a sudden he meets a number of these players again in another fun place. With these great players, but yeah, it's a fantastic story for him and for the players, and it really launches and is a really good sort of springboard for these players' careers, not just domestically, because you obviously have the unravelling of what happens in these players, as you said. If they go to Real Madrid and they go to sort of AC Milan, and Yugoslavia goes to Juventus, and they all get spread out all over Europe, don't they, during the 90s, because they can't compete as a unified nation after sort of 92, but. It really is the springboard to these players and gives them the confidence to go on for their clubs and obviously going in towards Italia 90.
It really does. Just another mention for Marcel Witterczak there for West Germany. He wins the Golden Boot at the tournament, 7 goals. Of all the players at this tournament to be, the villain from 12 yards. And again, just one of those wonderful quirks. Davor Šuker ends the tournament with 6 goals to his name. Mijatović and Boban get 3 each. It's a startling success. 17 goals scored across the breadth of the tournament. They win 5 out of the 6 games. The one draw coming in that semi-final that goes to a penalty shootout. The fluidity of this Yugoslavian side is quite incredible. Really, just honestly go out there and find the footage of it, because it's a jaw-dropping thing to watch. Senior levels, they've had this wonderful success, in Chile, and just a couple of weeks later, the senior side is going up against England in a Belgrade European Championship qualifier, which is, I don't know, I still have to pin it as the most startling England performance I think I've ever seen. I remember coming home from school It was something like a 4 or 4:30 kickoff live on ITV. A game where England were 4-0 up in about 18 minutes. Tony Adams even managed to get one of the goals. It was just one of those bizarre sweet spot 18 minutes of football that England play. Within that, it does help precipitate this flood of this, World Youth Championship winning side to come through, sooner than they might have done. If Yugoslavia reached the 1988 European Championship finals, maybe the development is, at a slower pace than it would be.
No, I think that's a really good point. I think, Ozzy, who sort of takes over in sort of 86, he always seems to be very, very loyal to his players. So the likes of, Stojkovic, you've got Katanec, you've got Hazvedic. Probably said his name completely wrong, and I do apologise to him. But you've also got Jurovic, and as you've got Safir Susic. So relies on these players an awful lot, and they've never really let him down. But I think something's got to change, and you've got these sensational players, but you've also got the likes of Darko Panchev knocking around. You've also got Savicevic knocking around. So you've got some really talented players that are slightly older than this 87 team, but have still got youth on their side. Where Safir Susic is like 33 now. Sort of going in sort of 35 by the time he gets to Italian 90. So I think it was inevitable that he almost had to blend these players in because these players are doing so well in the Yugoslav League as well. Got Red Star Belgrade's doing really well in the European stage at this point as well, and sort of showing their class against AC Milan and the infamous game of fog. I think Ozim almost has to change, but he's reluctant to change because he still has the loyalty to these older players. And he doesn't necessarily bring these players in and let the shackles off. It's still this transition and bringing the experience and the youth in together. And if it was me, I'd probably go a bit more gung-ho, but I'm not the Yugoslav manager and I'm not trying to deal with the unofficial quotas they're always talking about, where you've got to play so many Croats and so many Slovenes and so many Serbians and all those rules. So, yeah, I think, by the time Italy 90 qualification comes in, he is bringing those players in because I think he has to. They're doing too well domestically. I think he's got to bring them in.
The 1990 World Cup, they start with that, 4-1 defeat at the hands of West Germany at the San Siro. A real statement of intent from West Germany. Yugoslavia caught somewhat cold. It has to be fair to say that. But within that, Prosinečki is thrown on for the last 35 minutes of that game at the San Siro in place of Savicevic. Again, stepping stones within the face of within the face of an abject defeat. There's positivity there.
Yeah, I don't think Yugoslavia necessarily play that bad. I think they're just caught, as you say, very, very cold. And I think they play sort of three at the back, and I think they try and match almost West Germany sort of man for man. But I think Lothar Matthäus is just inspired form that day. He's got that brilliant solo goal. He's got that brilliant goal where he's sort of on the turn and smacked him with his left foot. Brilliant diving header from Jürgen Klinsmann. I don't know how he manages to get the angle on that from that diving header to be the goalie. And of course, really gets the goalie makes a mistake and he sort of just happens to just almost bundle the ball in. But yeah, I think that to say 4-1 flat as West Germany is a bit harsh, but I also think that 4-1's also a bit hard on Yugoslavia, if that makes any sense. I'm not saying they didn't deserve to lose, but 4-1 seems like that was a real hiding. And I don't necessarily think it was a major hiding, but it meant they had to come out a little bit, shall we say. I think they had to they knew they had to go and get a result against Colombia.
And get it, they do, in Bologna. This is Josic gets the goal 15 minutes from time. But of those players coming through, Darko Panchev and Robert Jarni are the ones that are thrown on as second half substitutes. The game's goalless until 15 minutes for the end, and there they are. They've made their contribution. It's a 4-1 victory over the United Arab Emirates again in Bologna a few days later in a game in which Prosinečki climbs from the bench to put the fourth goal in. Here are this burgeoning talent, and you can Panchev scores twice in this game. The evergreen Susic opened the score. You can kind of see a degree of frustration in a way, Michael, is that when you're looking at players making such an impact from the bench, There's a safety first element maybe at play.
Yeah, I think that Osim always pretty much has that safety first sort of mantra almost to I suppose not lose and try and be pragmatic. And then, as you say, he's got the youth, he's got the talent, he's got the skill on the bench to come off. But I think also you've got to remember as well at this time that Prosinečki is always going to be behind Jagan Stojković in the eyes of Osim, and Jagan Stojković is more experienced and he probably is a better player, to say in my opinion. But I think Stojković probably is better at this period. Jagan Stojković is one of my favourite players of all time, Stephen. So I'm always you just get very sort of very not defensive but very biased towards Jagan Stojković. But
nothing wrong with that, Michael. Nothing wrong with that at all, Michael.
I think I remember watching this UAE game, and I remember, don't get me wrong, UAE are UAE, so you have to take into context. But the way that Stojković was plucking the ball out of the air and playing these sort of nonchalant passes and seeing passes that no one else could see. I'd never seen a player like this. I know I'm older than you, so I've just never seen anyone sort of do this before. And he literally was like the conductor of the orchestra. But I think what you do need a striker who can finish off the chances, and that's where sort of Pančev comes in. Savicevic doesn't have a great World Cup, but Osim and Savicevic do seem to have a love-hate relationship. But I think Savicevic has that with a lot of people, to be fair. So, yeah, but I think you're right. I think it's safety first. But he also has the players on the bench to turn the game if he needs to, and he does in this case, and he does against Colombia. And the UAE was always going to be, in theory, an easy game, and they get the result they need to progress.
We do indeed. At the Bentagodi in the last 16, it's Spain. Here we are, the dark horses against this ethereal Yugoslavia of a tournament that I always feel guilty for flagging up that it wasn't the greatest in football in terms. This is one of the more intriguing games in this tournament. It goes into extra time. I think there's a definitive kind of like thought that Spain would come good in this, but actually the sucker punch belongs to Yugoslavia, and it's two goals from the aforementioned Dragan Stojković. But then again, you've got Pančev thrown in to start this one as well. Savicevic, plays, even longer. He comes into it as a substitute 10 minutes into the second half and plays for Pančev. This has got, you can kind of see what's going on. You can see what they're doing. Because it was at Italy at the 1970 World Cup who do a lot of that kind of, bring a player in, he plays the first half and then swap him. There's a lot of that at play. And there's some of that here. There's a great deal of, squad management going on, that is quite clever on Osim's, to Osim's credit.
Yeah, I think Osim also has a very fine line to tread because, of course, he's got to keep all these different ethnicities happy. And you've got this, as I said, we always bang on about this unofficial quota. So I think it's almost, who knows what his favoured starting 11 would be, because if he did have to play 2 Slovenes or 3 Serbs or 4 Croats or whatever it was, it's playing it's very sort of political tightrope of which players he can play and which players he can't. And again, if that quota is true, then he does a fantastic job. And even if it's not true, I still think he does a fantastic job managing all these different nationalities, which, okay, at this point they're still Yugoslav, don't get me wrong, but you've got a lot of characters there. Savicevic is not an easy person. You've got some players there that have been around for a while and probably think they should be there because they've been there for 10 years or so. But I think Osim was very much a diplomat and played a very good role trying to keep as many people happy as he possibly could.
Spinning a lot of plates, and that shows in the quarterfinals as well. When he does throw Robert Prosinečki into the starting lineup, he plays the full 120 minutes. The game goes goalless across those. The Argentinian side was absolutely shocking. How Yugoslavia, despite being down to 10 men for 90 minutes, basically, they still should win this game. I can always remember in my mind's eye that one opportunity that Sergei Gokčeja turns inwards onto his own post. It's kind of like a cross shot. I can't remember who did it, but instead of kind of like pushing the ball outwards or over his bar for a crossbar, it wasn't on target, it was off target, and he actually flicked it onto his own goal post. It was a mad one. But the penalty shootout, this is almost as painful as as any other penalty shootout I think I've ever seen.
It is an awful penalty shootout, and there is a point in that when Argentina missed 2 penalties, that it's the advantage is in Argentina's favour, and Yugoslavia's favour. It's not match point by any means, but it literally is. It's theirs to lose, and that's what they basically do. But
even Maradona has missed one of these spot kicks. It's unreal. It's an open invitation
as well.
Yeah.
But I think what's startling on this is that he doesn't play Panchev. He has Panchev on the bench. He doesn't bring him on. And I get when he's down to 10 men, he's trying to protect maybe and not lose. But when you get to a penalty shootout, you bring on a player who can take a penalty, surely, and he doesn't. And I think that's one of the big regrets, perhaps.
It is such a shame that this Yugoslavia side did not have the opportunity to go on and play Italy in what could have been a majestic semi-final in Naples. It's a tantalising one. It's an utterly tantalising one. Post 1990 World Cup, there's so much to unwrap there, Michael. We've got the rise of Red Star Belgrade, eventual European Cup success, civil war. Where do you want to start?
That's a very good question. I suppose you should probably go back to 1980, but we'd be here all day. But Tito dies in 1980, and the country starts to unravel from that point onwards. Really, there's sort of rise of nationalism all over the country. It's just such a sad story, really. That there's like a rolling presidency, and each republic has a vote, and there's 2 autonomous regions which also have a vote, and Slobodan Milosevic basically manipulates the council and has pretty much 4 votes out of 8. So anything in that country almost just gets gridlocked, and he just comes to a stalemate. And then it's inevitable then that the other republics want to split and break away from Yugoslavia, which of course they do. But I think this is when I'll be honest with you, Stephen. I find this story in about 1990 when I'm about 8 years old. So I sort of loved this Yugoslavian team, and then all of a sudden this team disappears, and I couldn't understand at the age of sort of 9 and 10 how this had happened. And I started studying it and reading about it, and ended up going to university and doing Bosnia and Yugoslavia as my dissertation. So it's sort of Yugoslavia football politics all sort of rolls into one for me. So it's just the football and the politics mixed in together. It's such a shame that these players didn't go on as a unified nation and did what they could have done or should have done perhaps in the 90s at Euro 92, USA 94, Euro 96 and France 98. But it's the forces of nationalism just destroy Yugoslavia. And you can look at the Maximir Stadium issue in 1990 with Dynamo Zagreb and Red Star Belgrade, and 3,000 Red Star fans turn up, led by Arkan. He ends up being a war criminal in the Bosnian War, and they basically intent in violence, and there's rioting, there's seats are thrown, and there's fighting, and of course the police, stand by at first, then eventually get involved, and that's when the legend of Boban comes in, because he goes and sort of kicks the policeman, breaks his jaw, gets suspended, hence why he doesn't go to Italian 90, which is why we haven't just talked about him. But he always sort of says, that he did it for his nation and he did it for Croatia. And there's arguments to say that was the beginning of the end, and I think there are arguments to say it wasn't, because I think, to be honest with you, it was too late by that point. The Croats already had an election a few weeks before, so I think that was the backdrop to that game. That the Croats had a sort of election, and they were looking to go independent, which of course they did a year later. But I know football can be a healer in many things, and I think that a number of people sort of held on to the fact or the hope that football could unify the nation. And I think it didn't going into Italia 90, but I think after the Spain game, all of a sudden everyone seemed to get behind the team again. And it was almost like the last hurrah of unity, perhaps. And then, of course, the lose of Argentina, and then it goes wrong. But I think Yugoslavia, looking at what was happening behind the scenes, I think, to be honest, it was too late. If Yugoslavia won the World Cup, I don't think it would have stopped them. If I'm honest, I still think civil war would have taken over. How brutal and bloody and the genocides that happened, no one could foresee that. That was just unbelievable and just shocking.
Yeah, it was indeed. And then we have the 92 European Championship, and what was it? It was 11 days before the tournament. They're eventually jettisoned from it for a completely different story to unfold under the Danish flag. This was one of the great what ifs that go along with football. People will often go into this and wonder what might have been. But like I say, the forces of gravity, are pulling, and within that, without going too far into the 90s, we have Croatia blossoming. And I say, the European Championship quarter-finalists in '96, World Cup semi-finalists in '98. Those players combined to such others that they were going to go to the 1992 European Championships with. It is a tantalising, window into what might well have been in a parallel universe.
Yeah, I remember I wrote a piece of this back in sort of the early days of COVID, and I sort of said, there's no doubt that Yugoslavia could have done what Spain did in sort of 2008, 2010, 2012, and just won 3 tournaments back to back if they were unified. All those players played together. And in some respects, I don't envy the manager to pick which players he would be in starting 11, because you look at those players that he could have had. If you look at the forward line alone, if you think you could have Boksic, Šuker, Mijatović and Savicevic and Pančev, you think there's 5 sort of almost world-class players there. I know you could argue Savicevic would probably go a bit further back, into midfield, but then you've then got to try and get Stojkovic, Prosinečki, Boban. You could bring a Stanovic into that and Stanic into that, and the list just goes on and on and on. Jugovic, probably one of the most underrated and most sort of decorated players there is in world football. Always wins everything. I know he doesn't win everything, but he almost does. Sort of Juventus, and he's never mentioned. He's never talked about. I think because he's not a glamorous, he's not a sexy player, is he, compared to the other guys we've been talking about. But Mihajlovic, like the king of free kicks, for argument's sake, just an unbelievable collection of players. If anything, you just maybe think they don't have a world class goalkeeper, but almost every other position is world class.
It is incredible. Yeah, looking at the ages of some of these players is just startling. Properly within the sweet spot of something building. So many players in their early 20s. Then that next generation that had been in the mid to late 20s. It's absolutely unreal. Michael, what we'll go with now is our "I'm finally" section. I won't give you the pain of giving us a hypothetical question of where Yugoslavia would have got to in the 1992 European Championships. I think that's too much of a a tantalising prospect. Not in the best of ways, but give us a non-footballing sporting event from 1987 that made an impression on you.
Well, you got to remember I'm only 6 at this point, so I didn't watch a great deal of sport, if I'm honest. But one thing that did stick in my memory was Pat Cash and winning Wimbledon with the checkerboard or the sort of black and white chessboard sort of bandana around his head, and trying to climb onto the roof at Wimbledon. I can't remember if he actually did or he didn't. And I looked at YouTube and I think he goes to and he doesn't. I know Rafa Nadal does years later. He actually does it. And I think that was something that always sort of stuck in my mind. I think and sort of Ivan Lendl was always that player that was like this sort of Eastern European machine. Talk about Eastern European. And, Pat Cash, this very likeable Australian guy, just wins. Yeah, I think, and it's the headband, and maybe that's a sort of karate kid in me, maybe thinking sort of putting the two together. I think you got the Rugby World Cup, first ever Rugby World Cup. I watch a lot of rugby as well. My son plays rugby, so probably subconscious. But maybe that's more of something when you look back in history and you look back at what's happened in previous World Cups as you do. And also you got the World Championship Athletics in '87 in Rome. And I used to love athletics. I don't watch so much now, but I used to love athletics.
Yeah.
And I used to love. I still watched it at the Olympics, but I used to literally, when I think it was on BBC with David Coleman and just his I know I remember he's legendary for football, but I think when he was, I knew him first as an athletics commentator, and just his commentary and the way he was so not blunt, but didn't really have many words, but he was so quick in the way he used to talk. I think the amount of words he'd get into 100 metres within 10 seconds of what he'd say was unbelievable. So yeah, I think it's probably Pat Cash, Rugby World Cup, and World Athletics.
I think that's totally fair. I can well remember Pat Cash and that attempt to get to the to his family in the box. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I can. Ivan Lendl being was it Ivan Drago in Rocky IV? He was like a tennis version of that. It was the fact that you felt if he did elicit a smile, it would have literally cracked his face and stuff like that. Looking back at him, I've got a soft spot for him now that I never had at the time. That makes me think. I wish he'd have got that Wimbledon title that he, or at least one of those years. Maybe not the Pat Cash year, but I'd have allowed him if I could go back in the time machine, I'd have allowed him a Wimbledon title. But the World Athletics Championships. Yeah, I can well remember the shock and awe of Ben Johnson.
Yeah,
which would obviously rumble on into Seoul the following year. But yeah, because Carl Lewis was absolutely just dominant. In his everything he ever did. It was unreal what Ben Johnson did in '87. But obviously, there was a story there still to unfold. Moving on, our back page headlines, Michael, from the week leading up to the opening game of the 1987 World Youth Championships. Anything else of these that piques your interest particularly? Ian Rush is suffering frustration at Juventus as Verona defeat his new employers 2-1. The Bianconeri have slipped to 8th in Serie A, which, in an 18-team Serie A is absolutely shocking for Juventus. They're now without a win on their travels in almost a year. We're about a fortnight away from a full year without an away win for Juventus. Bayern Munich are reported to be lining up a £1.5 million move for Clive Allen. Cyril Regis is recalled to the England squad for the first time in 5 years. And John Lyall is under pressure at West Ham. A League Cup. This is after a League Cup extra time capitulation at home to Barnsley. Terry Venables and Harry Redknapp are both being linked as a potential replacement should Lyall get the boot. In the meantime, he is still employed at Upton Park. Lyall is on the hunt for a new striker to replace Frank McAvenny, who departed for Celtic the previous week, and with scattergun interest reported in Kerry Dixon, Paul Walsh, Kevin Drinkle, Peter Davenport and Mark Falco, none of which end up signing for West Ham. While Ray Houghton turns down a move to Nottingham Forest, he is reportedly hell-bent on a move to either Liverpool or Arsenal. Michael, any of those headlines that particularly pique your interest?
I laughed at the Clive Allen going to Bayern Munich for £1.5 million, but I think then you look at the context and think he just had a storming season at Tottenham.
Yeah, those 47 goals were unreal.
Yeah, and you think, well, actually, maybe I can get why Bayern Munich were looking at him. But I looked at that originally and I thought, that one did sort of stick out a little bit. I think Cyril Regis getting a recall to the England squad, get that. I laughed about John Lyall under pressure at West Ham. I was thinking, well, when was he not under pressure at West Ham in that sort of period post? I think after the 86, when they obviously finished sort of third, and sort of think after that they sort of go into a bit of a freefall, don't they? A little bit. So I sort of thought, that didn't really surprise me. I sort of smiled at sort of Kerry Dixon, going to West Ham. I get that. He's at Chelsea doing really well. Paul Walsh. And then he then goes down the list and it's like Kevin Drinkle and sort of Peter Davenport. And I was thinking, not quite the same level as Frank McAvenny, to be fair. Mark Falco, good striker, probably getting on a little bit. I think, was he at Rangers at this point? Has he gone to Rangers by now?
Quite possible.
Ray Houghton turns and moves to Nottingham Forest. He goes to the better club. He goes to Liverpool, doesn't he, of course? But, Nottingham Forest at that time, by all means, one of the bigger teams, one of the best teams in the first division at the time. He was playing at Oxford, wasn't he? So it would have been a step up, obviously. But, and he goes to Liverpool not long after. So he did get his move to Liverpool that he wanted. He does.
And it's coming up very, very soon. Is a switch to Liverpool. 25th of October 1987. Michael, this is the day of the World Youth Championship final. With no coverage of this competition. Even though Scotland have been involved in it, we have absolutely no coverage of it. What are we watching on TV instead of the football from Chile, although we do have some football to watch? I'll give you the rundown of what we've got. Sunday afternoon, the EastEnders Omnibus, 2:00 on BBC One. Apparently, it's Sharon's celebrating her 18th birthday. We have the movie After the Fox following that, which is it's the write up. Let's have a look at our Charles Swan is responsible for our write ups in the Sunday Mirror, and I don't know. It's like he's had a sherry or two before writing some of these synopsises. Tally ho! It's Peter Sellers in full cry as a crook in Italy using the cover of a film unit on location to smuggle gold bullion. Not as funny as it thinks it's being, but it does have Victor Mature, marvellously self-mocking as an ageing film star. 2 stars. Quite withering right up in the movies. The movie guide there. We've got Motor Fair 1987. A chance to see what car manufacturers have dreamt up for 1988. Vanity Fair. Amelia is distraught with worry about George as the men go off to fight the Battle of Waterloo, but Becky's devious little head is full of plans as usual. Later in the evening, we've got Ever Decreasing Circles, Howard's Way, Bread, Fortune of War. BBC Two, not under the banner of Sunday Grandstand, but we've got Rugby Special, Weekend Highlights, including Moseley versus Coventry, Ebervale versus US Eagles, and Ulster versus Munster. Snooker and Gymnastics. It's the first 8 frames of the World Grand Prix from Reading, along with it's the individual apparatus finals of the World Gymnastic Championships in Rotterdam. Other offerings on BBC Two throughout the day. Music and Camera Review, the Money Programme, all unwatchable stuff. The Natural World at 8:35, the world's longest nature reserves alongside railway tracks. Interesting pocket of nature on BBC Two. We have more snooker later on, the final frames of the final at the World Grand Prix, and more World Gymnastics Championships highlights of the final day. Channel 4 is giving us Empress Wu, a historical drama series about China's first empress, who started off as a lady-in-waiting at the age of 14. This follows by Objective Burma from 1944. We've got American football highlights. Angelo Abela and Andy Smart, the Vicious Boys, look back at a game from the previous weekend. I do remember the Vicious Boys hosting American football on Channel 4. The Black Rhino, The Last Stand, focus on Zimbabwe's wildlife department's attempts to save the few surviving black rhinos from determined poachers. We then have the experience of the Holocaust, Shohan, later in the evening on Channel 4. ITV, they are giving us from the afternoon. We do have live football from the First Division, Michael. West Ham versus Manchester United. This is followed by Knights of God, the Queen's Tour of Canada. Sunday, Gloria Hunniford chats to Cilla Black, Clive James and Kate O'Mara. We have Play Your Cards Right, Highway. Live from the Palladium, Jimmy Tarbuck introduces Donna Summer, Barry White, the Communards, and Joe Cocker. Comedy from Tom O'Connor and Jimmy Cricket, plus clever impersonations from Mike Osman. After the news, it's Nigel Havers in The Charmer, and with a bit of Rick Mail with The New Statesman. And then a little bit more highbrow, it's the South Bank show at 10:30. Anything in particular? Obviously, West Ham versus Manchester United, Michael, would be a must.
I think the football, yes. But other than that, there's very slim pickings there. Let's be honest, Stephen. You've not given me a very good list of TV. I would probably go there with Decreasing Circles, because that is a program I do still love to this day. I do think that is my wife's still a bit like Martin, which is a bit worrying. I prefer to be Paul, but I'm not Paul, I'm Martin apparently. And Bread, we watch Bread occasionally. Didn't ever watch Howard's Way. I think my parents did, but I didn't really watch Howard's Way. But other than that, no, I'm not really interested in any of that stuff there. Snooker's okay, but other than that, no, I'm not watching TV other than the football. Yeah,
it was slim pickings. Just as a point of interest, the Manchester United game at West Ham, which was witnessed by 19,863, ended in a 1-1 draw. Yeah, so it was on us even with Manchester United dropping 2 points there. By then, under almost a year under the guidance of Alex Ferguson. Moving on to our next and finally section. As mentioned, no coverage of the World Youth Championship on UK TV. Off to the cinema instead, Michael. Again, this looks a little bit slim pickings.
I was cursing you when I got this through on the email the other day. Yeah, it's an absolutely awful list, to be honest with you. I'm not even going to decipher this list to go through it in a lot, because a lot of these films I didn't even know. I've been looking on Wikipedia at them and I literally was like, no, not interested in that. So, Fatal Attraction's number one, not my cup of tea. Bear in mind I'm 6 and this is an 18, so not watching it at the age of 6. Probably wouldn't watch it now, to be honest with you. Dirty Dancing at number 4, not my type of thing either. Looking through the list, probably RoboCop at 24, perhaps, is something that I would watch or want to watch. And the only other thing on that list that I looked through that I haven't watched and I think I might actually go and find and watch is probably Hope and Glory, which is at 42, which is a film about the writer. It's a story about himself during the war in war-torn Britain, sort of 1939, sort of 1945. So that and his experiences, and that sounded sort of fairly interesting. But other than that, it's a very, 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 very forgivable list. Very forgivable.
Yeah, it is. It's not. I don't think I'm using my pocket money for this one. Stakeout rings a bell to me. I don't know. Was it a Billy Crystal film? I'm not sure. Could be whether I'm imagining that one. Like Father, Like Son. I'm not sure if that was a Tom Hanks film or was it Steve Martin. Again, I'm probably crossing the films. I'm thinking of different films and stuff like that. But beyond that, Michael, I did send you the top 40 on the day that Yugoslavia won the 1987 World Youth Championship. What are you going to be illegally recording from the radio? I'm presuming at this point in time it was Bruno Brooks hosting. It could have been Mark Goodyear, but you managed to take a look, and have you found anything that's looking likely for an illegal recording?
Yeah,
I'll allow you a C90 tape, so you can take as many as you want.
There's a few in there. Again, it's not the best list in the world. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot I do like. There's a lot in there I do know, because I do like my 80s music. But I think you can start seeing the Stock Aitken of Waterman sort of evident in this chart a little bit, because there's a lot of Rick Astley in this list. I think he's appears 3 or 4 times. And there's Bananarama and 5 Star. So I don't know if 5 Star were a Stock Aitken of Waterman, but if they weren't, I think they deserve to be, because that's the type of music that they seem to produce. I think number 5, Little Lies, Fleetwood Mac. I think that's a very classy song, still like that today. Excellent
song.
I was going through the list. I looked at Crockett's theme, which was from Miami Vice, but when I listened to it, it's just reminded me of the bank cover at NatWest 91. There's a NatWest bank. I literally listened to it and I went, that's a bank, and I thought it was Abbey National, and it's only when I looked it up and I went, no, it's NatWest. So I would have got that wrong in a pub quiz, but I wouldn't have recorded it. I think Rent, Pet Shop Boys, number 8. I do like that song. I think it's one of those songs, a bit like Suburbia, that just slips under the radar a little bit. It's not It's a Sin. It's not a Always in My Mind, or it's not West End Girls. It's not one of the big ones, but I do like that song. It's a nice little one. Pump Up the Volume, number 16. That's sampled, I think, by Fatboy Slim. It's played at the Amex quite a lot. As you probably know, I'm a Brighton fan, Stephen. So they played that at the beginning of the montage. There's a little link there. But I did like that back in the day anyway. 19, Shining a Hand to Power. I probably would be recording that. And other than that, I think I went all the way back to as a lot of these charts, the further you go towards 100, the better they are.
that is it's a recurring theme, is that the top 20 does often end up being something to write off, and you can find stuff kind of like somewhere between 20 and 40. But if you dip below the 40, then you do find some absolutely, whether the on the way up, trying to break into the top 40, or the slipping down from up upon high.
Well, the new entry at 53 is criticised Alexander O'Neill. I still love this song to this day, and that's, as I said, new entry straight in 53, and I don't know how far that got up the charts, but it's still a great song. I like that one. Need You Tonight, In Excess. Only been in the chart 2 weeks, number 60. I do like In Excess.
Down from number 58.
I don't know if that got re-released because I think it peaked at like 7 or 8. It's their only top 10 single, actually. In Excess. That's a bit of useless information for you.
Must have had a reissue there then.
Yeah, must have been. And other than that, there's not much else really that's I'd be recording. I laughed at 72 Cars E-Reg model, and I just thought, is that an Escort or something, or a Sierra? It just made me laugh. I thought, what's an E-Reg model Cars song? I just thought of a clapped out Ford. Well, say clapped out would have been brand new, wouldn't it? But it's just other than that, a very, very forgettable list, really. I don't know if there's anything there that takes your fancy, Stephen.
It's not a halcyon one.
No,
I mean, in pop terms, number 6, the Circus by Erasure is probably one of their better ones. Yeah, you've got to like a bit of Pet Shop Boys. But yeah, scanning through this, it's I wouldn't be hitting the play and record button too much here. Tapau always make me smile. Carl Kopak, who will be on in a few modules time, had an interesting kind. He had a pop at Tapau on Twitter, as was one evening. Tapau had cropped up in conversation, a communal conversation, and he professed his dislike of Tapau quite emphatically, and Carol Decker herself chipped in with with laughing emojis and a soz Carl. Which was just like one of the finest moments that I've seen on Twitter. But yeah, it's really, really properly, slim pickings. It truly is. There, there's not much. Valerie, Steve Winwood, but even then, that's in brackets 1987. So I'll probably not like that version of it. I prefer the original. Yeah, it's not a golden one there, Michael.
No, not at all.
Thank God that Yugoslavia are doing us proud at the World Youth Championships.
Definitely.
Just a nod back towards the snooker. Our winner in Reading was predictably Stephen Hendry. Although probably a very young Stephen Hendry at that point. He defeated Dennis Taylor 10-7 in the final at Reading. Michael, have you enjoyed yourself?
Yes, no, loved it. Brilliant. Always happy to talk about Yugoslavia, and always happy to talk about football, anything anyway. So yeah, I'd love to come back again, and I'd like a better music list and a better box office list.
I will do my best to that one. Michael has already selected his next topic, which we'll keep up our sleeve for now. But it won't be venturing too far west, to put it that way. It's been a joy to do, Michael. Thank you so much for joining us. All that leaves me to say is to please do spread the word. Your boys took hell of a beating, the definitive 1980s football podcast with lots of nonsense interjected as well. We are on all manner of. I've said it before. We're on Spotify, we're on Apple. Do join us on Substack, which you can join for free. Do join us for free. We're also on a lot of platforms that we've never heard of before. But we're looking to get us out there on the Atari 2600 ZX Spectrum and the Commodore 64 certainly before Christmas. Keep an eye out for us. All that leaves me to do is say thank you and goodbye.